For this tutorial, you will learn how to sew the basket quilt block. I'm going to show you how to make your half square triangles using 2 different pieces, and you'll be making 8 of these at a time. Each basket block will use 6 of the half square triangles, so if you do this for a single block, you will have some leftovers, or you can make multiples. So I've got all my pieces cut and I am ready to make my half square triangles for the first step. The first thing you're going to do is on the wrong side of the light fabric, you're going to draw diagonally from corner to corner, as well as the center of the vertical and horizontal. So now we are going to sew a 1/4 inch seam on both sides of that drawn diagonal line. At the end, I'm going to put my needle down and just pivot it, and then go down the other side. And repeat for the other diagonal line. Okay, now you're going to cut on the vertical and horizontal center lines, and then cut on the diagonal lines, and then press your half square triangles and square them up if you need. First thing I'm going to do is cut on the vertical and horizontal lines. Makes it really easy because they're pre-drawn, and then I'm going to cut on the diagonal. After I cut them, I'm going to press them open and press the seams to the dark side. So I'm going to flip this up and press it this way. Then I'm going to check my measurements and square them up if I need. Okay, I have all of my half square triangles are trimmed up. And with these larger square pieces, I'm going to be cutting them in half diagonally, and I'm going to be using one side of this. Again, this is a little wasteful, but if you're making more than one block, this works out really good. So I need one of those and these 2. So now at this point, what I can do is lay my block out. I'm going to use this wool mat to lay my block out because I can transfer it over to my sewing table. So they're going to kind of overlap a little bit of each other because okay, I'm going to lay my rectangles down with my triangles. I will need to sew these 2 together before sewing the block together, but I've got them in place and ready to go. And I'm going to set up my half square triangles in place. All right, and then I've got my last triangles that go right here, right sides out. So now I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and put a few of these pieces before I put the block together. And actually, looking at that, it looks like that one isn't correct. There we go. The first thing I'm going to do is sew these triangles onto the end of my rectangle piece. Make sure that they're facing the correct way. I'm going to repeat that for the second piece. Now I can go and press these open, and they are ready for the next step. Okay, now I can just look at my block and start taking pieces and sewing them together. I'm going to start with my half square triangles. Put them into pairs. So I'm just grabbing them over and then flipping right sides together. On this bottom of the basket, I'm going to sew this triangle on. Make sure that it is the right direction. And then I'm going to snip off the top piece, open it back up, make sure they are going in the half square triangles are going in the right direction, and then add that third line right onto it. Kind of chain piecing these into rows. So here's my second row. Make sure that they're going the right direction. And then I'm going to sew the triangle onto that. All right, so I've got the first row, and then this is the last row, so I need the second row in between. So here's the first row, the second row, and then if you can see it, I'll add my third row right at the bottom here. So I'm going to sew these two rows together first. If you find it easier to press them before you sew them together, that would be just fine. When you get to the seams, you want to just make sure one seam is going one direction and the other seam is opposite. So if you can see, they're kind of nested together. Reduces the bulk of the block. Not sure why my seam is popping up, but there we go. All right, I'm going to open that up, and I am going to sew the last row to it. I'm going to put the previous row on top, because then I can see where my seam is already laying, and I can make sure that the new seam, or for that new row, is opposite of it. So I kind of be bossy. There we go. And then looking at this one, I can make sure that the seam is laying down or up, depending on what was done previously. So now I will need to go and press this before adding, going to the next step. Notice that I have a lot of fabric coming off these ends. So I'm going to trim that off really quick before I move forward, making sure that I still leave a 1/4 inch seam before my point so I don't lose that point. So now I have trimmed this off, and you can see I still have a 1/4 inch seam at that point, and these points are ready. So now I can sew my basket triangle to this block. You'll notice that my points will be off of the edge, and that will be just fine because it will make the points perfect. Feeling like this is a little bulky. I'm not sure. The seam isn't wanting to stay down. There we go. All right, and now I can go ahead and press this open and square it up. Okay, now I can add my rectangles with the triangle basket feet to this. So I just need to do right sides together again. Line up my sides or my edges and sew them together. If you notice, your point will be coming off that edge, and that's just how you want it. So that point is a little bit extra there. So you're going to press this open and then sew the other side. So now I have this pressed. I'm going to go ahead and lay this right together. So line up my sides. And again, you'll notice that your point holds off or hangs off the edge just a little bit. All right, and then we're going to press this open as well. I did notice that there was some extras on the edge again. I just made sure that when I trimmed it, I left a 1/4 inch from this point to the edge. And now I can lay my last background triangle on top. And you'll notice that your points again will extend past the basket underneath of it. Make sure your sides are aligned. All right, now we're going to press this and square it up if needed.